Am I the a-hole for kicking my husband out of the delivery room? I was in labor for 26 hours and was in a lot of pain as I didn't take an epidural. My husband was constantly on the phone, either playing games or talking with his bros, being really loud. When I asked him to please hang up, he'd hang up the phone and then like 10 minutes later call them back. He really wanted to talk to them because his friends went on a boys' trip without him, because I asked him to stay back so he could be here when I went into labor. They were calling to tell him about how their trip was going. He apologized to them, blaming it on me being a nag. I was really annoyed and told him if he wanted to talk to his friend, he could do that elsewhere so I can be in pain and peace. He was like, "Alright, fine baby, I'll just call them back later." So I had about 20 minutes of peace until his mom FaceTimed him, where he proceeded to put me in a video call. His mom then makes a comment about how she remembers when she was in labor with him and that she still did herself up. She even claimed she looked so good that a doctor was even flirting with her. I was holding back everything inside me to not say something, as I didn't want to disrespect my mother-in-law. But at the same time, she sometimes just makes the stupidest comments at worst times, and at this moment, I could not stand talking to her. A nurse ends up coming in and could tell I was upset and asks me if everything was alright, and I tell her I just really want to be alone. She ends up kicking out my husband, and in turn he ends up missing the birth of our firstborn daughter, because he left the hospital as he was angry that I got the nurse to kick him out the room. He refused to come see his daughter afterwards because he was angry at me for kicking him out. My mother-in-law, who did visit me in the hospital, wouldn't stop talking about how I'm such a bad wife for removing my husband from the room. When I got home, he kept on bringing up how I ruined a moment of bonding with his daughter, and how he could never forgive me for that. Am I the a-hole for kicking my husband out the delivery room because he was making phone calls? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. That's a whole lot of red flags from your husband. 1. Had to be told not to leave on boys' holiday when his wife would likely be giving birth to his child. 2. Ignored his laboring wife to chat with his friends on his said trip. 3. Called them back after being told to hang up. 4. Answered a video chat from someone you didn't want in the room. 5. Allowed that person to be disrespectful towards you. 6. Went off in a sulk instead of visiting you and his child as soon as he was allowed back in. If he has a problem with the situation, you could ask him what he was feeling the last time he had a new person escaping from his vagina, so you can compare notes and come up with a compromise. 100% all of this. The deflection makes me angry for her. She needed her husband and he acted like a child. Childbirth is nothing to joke about. Women die in childbirth and it's painful. Definitely not the a-hole, but having to tell a grown man how to act isn't something you want to be doing while in labor. Absolutely. Maybe I'm just always looking for an out, but I would have filed divorce the second I left the hospital with that behavior. I absolutely love and adore my partner, and he is literally only green flags. I'm pregnant, and if he did even one of the things on this list while I was actively in labor, I would get my friends to pack my things and never come home to him. This is disgusting behavior. Not the a-hole. The nurse kicked him out of the room. He's the one that chose to leave the hospital altogether. Tell him you missed the birth of your daughter because you threw a temper tantrum and left the hospital. If you had been focused on me and the baby instead of playing games and having loud phone calls with your friends, I never would have asked you to leave the room. You're mad that you missed this moment? Well, I am mad that when your daughter and I needed you most, you prioritized chatting with your friends and complaining about what a nag I am. I am mad that when I was in an incredibly vulnerable position, you let your mom insult me. I am mad that you're blaming me for something that was the consequences of your own selfish actions. I am mad that you're still making the situation about yourself and playing the victim instead of celebrating that I gave birth to our daughter. I'd copy and paste that into a message to him, because that's exactly what happened. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for paying first-class airfare for my nanny and not my son? Me and my husband had our first child, Matt, 18 male, when we were just 17 years old. We weren't in a very good financial situation at first, and it only got better when Matt was 9. Currently, we both work well-paying jobs, bought a spacious home, and have our luxuries. We had 2 more children, 8 male and 5 female. As we cannot stay at home all the time, we hired a nanny, a 45 female, to take care of the little ones. Matt had a complicated personality change at age 11. We put him in a private school, and maybe the contact with other teenagers brought out a selfish and elitist side of him. We tried our best to try to improve it, but with the onset of adolescence and stubbornness, it just seemed to get worse. It got better when my husband and I decided that at age 16, he would work part-time so he could start taking financial responsibility, and that seemed to give him a reality check as we cut our support on his perks. This year, after the worst period of the pandemic, my husband and I decided to go on an international trip. And instead of giving May a vacation at home, we decided that we would take her, not going to work, and pay for everything. I don't live in the US. Matt, on a random day, overheard me talking to my husband that I was planning to pay for a first-class seat for May and her son, for her to enjoy like we did. Matt then asked why we should do this. We were already paying for everything. Let her go economy class if she can't afford first class. I was shocked. I said that it was mean to say this, and that she was an important person for our family who gives up having time for her own child to take care of mine. It's the least I can do. He still stood his ground. So I said if he sees it that way, I said I'd buy him an economy seat and he'd have to turn around to pay for an upgrade, for him to see how privileged he is to have parents who can pay. He nodded, thinking it was a joke, even though I said it wasn't. As the months went by, I warned him that his ticket was economy, and he didn't believe it. On the day of the trip, like a shocked Pikachu, he was startled when he realized I told the truth. He threw a tantrum in the middle of the airport, saying that 10 hours of travel would be very uncomfortable. I just replied, "You had 6 months together. You've been warned." The flight was okay, but Matt was outraged the entire trip, saying it was almost torture and that we had gone too far. My husband agrees with me, but my parents said I went too far doing this. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He fooled around and found out. Doesn't sound like those elitist attitudes really left. Just simmered for a while. My parents said I went too far doing this. Yes, you absolutely tortured him by making him sit with a peasant. How awful. Exactly. He's lucky she still took him on vacation at all. Imagine what the flight would have been like with him whining in a nearby seat. Not the a-hole, and I'm sorry you have such an entitled son. Ask him why almost torture would be fine for the nanny but not for him. Because that wouldn't work with someone like this. My husband's 39, younger brother 28, has never had a job that lasted more than 3 months until he started doing DoorDash and skipped the dishes, because he didn't want to be told what to do. In his mind, having anyone physically watch what you do was unacceptable. You bet he would completely freak if he was in this situation. Asking why it is okay for them and not him would have the response of, "They are to help. We pay them. They aren't owed anything." Entitlement is a terrible thing. Not the a-hole. Matt can't tell you what to do with your money, and is plain mean and classist to negotiate a downgrade in airfare for anyone. However, you have already tried taking privileges away by making him work and not supporting his perks. I don't think monetary punishment is going to work anymore. You need a new solution. I would try a family therapist to see what is at the bottom of his relationship with money and what you can do to change it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to punish my daughter for being rude to her grandmother and clapping back at mother-in-law? No one in the family likes mother-in-law's husband for a couple of reasons. He works in an immoral industry and admits he will do anything for money. He is very pompous/competitive and likes to take digs about everyone's financial situations. He was a lazy parent to his own children and a cold and jealous stepfather to his stepchildren. Really, mother-in-law is the only person who likes him. She gets an entirely different side of him, but at the same time, I feel she can't just ignore who he is. My 13-year-old daughter is a very smart and intelligent girl and has decided to be no contact with him. We fully support her and she no longer attends family events. Recently, we went out in a group for someone's birthday. Just the women, so he was not there or she would not have gone, and we saw the musical Hadestown. After the musical, we grabbed dinner and my daughter was talking about how the kids in her theater group are obsessed with it, and she feels they romanticize a toxic relationship in the two of the main characters, Hades and Persephone, and Hades should be viewed strictly as a villain. Mother-in-law said, "It's honestly the best feeling though when someone hates everyone but you. It's so cute." My daughter replied, "Well, that isn't surprising, as we've all seen the a-hole you married." Mother-in-law laughed and said, "If you were my kid, you'd be in so much trouble right now," and looked at me like she expected me to say something. I replied that I don't believe in punishing for every little thing, and my daughter was expressing her opinion. I said that mother-in-law said something which offended my daughter, so my daughter responded, and there would be no punishment. I also said that I try not to come from a place of authoritarian parenting. Mother-in-law said I clearly got whatever I wanted, and that is why my daughter is so annoying to be around. I replied that mother-in-law was reactive and controlling with her own kids, and now they all hate her. Mother-in-law was furious, and now the family is pretty divided. My husband is actually on his mom's side, which surprised me because he usually isn't. Now for the top comments. Everyone sucks here. Mother-in-law gave an opinion your daughter did not like. She did not attack your daughter. Rather than replying with evidence justifying her opinion, your daughter chose to use a personal attack. Your daughter was unnecessarily unkind to mother-in-law. Mother-in-law's response to your lack of action was inappropriate on her part. But your response was just as bad, if not worse. Personal attacks are not okay. Everyone here acted inappropriately. The mother-in-law made a ridiculous remark and got the full brunt of teenaged no a-holes barred, no BS, and she deserved very little bit of it. Mother-in-law said something your daughter disagreed with. Your daughter responded by calling her husband an a-hole, and then it spiraled into the realm of ridiculous from there. This is the stuff divorces are made of. I feel sorry for your husband. Everyone sucks here. It's not something the daughter disagrees with. It's mother-in-law admitting to her family that she likes how her husband treats them like trash. Mother-in-law gets off on inflicting her awful husband on everyone else because she needs to feel like a queen. She deserves to be slammed down for that. She's not just staying in the relationship because he's lovely to her. She actively likes how he treats everyone else like crap. Why should they all just ignore that? You're the a-hole. That was extremely rude and unprovoked. Grandma didn't even insult or say anything bad to your daughter. She was talking about a common romance trope, and your daughter made it about her grandma's relationship. It's okay for her to want no contact with her grandfather, but blatantly insulting her grandmother for being married to him is not okay. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend to stop acting entitled on her period? I, 28 male, have been with my girlfriend, 26 female, for 3 years now. We have a great relationship aside from this one issue, but the issue has gotten to the point where I think it might be a deal breaker. She's always been a little moody on her period, but it was a lot less intense at the beginning of our relationship. In the past year, it's become unbearable. When my girlfriend is on her period, she becomes a totally different person. She won't go to work nor do chores. She lays in bed for 7 to 10 days and expects me to do everything for her. I work 10-hour days, and she demands I cook for her and clean the house as soon as I get home. She will leave a bloody mess in the bedroom and bathroom and demand I clean it. Now, the worst part isn't her staying in bed or making me do all the chores. I could probably handle that on its own. The worst part is her attitude. She becomes extremely mean and will insult me for the entire week. She has made me cry before due to how awful she gets. Nothing I do is up to her standards. If I don't do what she asks as soon as she asks it, she throws what I can only describe as a tantrum. She will scream, cry, and has even thrown things at me. She has lost jobs due to her trying to take 7 to 10 days off a month. If they don't approve her time off, she either quits or just doesn't show up, which leads to her getting fired. Thankfully, she's found a more flexible job, but her taking so much unpaid time off is causing us to struggle financially. At first, I was extremely concerned that it was a health issue and urged her to go to her doctor. However, she refused. After almost a year of begging her to go to the doctor, I have given up because I can't force her to go. And she gets extremely angry when I mention it, saying I'm selfish and don't want to take care of her. It causes me a lot of emotional distress because I know something is probably seriously wrong, but I can't force her to go get it checked. She's even gotten her family involved to get me to stop nagging her to go to the doctor. Today, she somehow bled all over the toilet seat and just left it for me to clean, which I did. I was exhausted from work and said I didn't want to cook and will order takeout. She started to insult me, even mentioning some trauma from my past just to hurt me. I lost my cool and told her she needs to stop being a massive entitled jerk to me and that her period is not an excuse to act like this. She screamed and started throwing stuff at me, and I ended up going to stay with my parents. I have tried so hard to be understanding and to support her, but I can't take this anymore. She has her family messaging me and calling me an a-hole, and I do feel bad because I do think she's in pain, and it's likely a medical issue. But on the other hand, what am I supposed to do if she won't go to the doctor? Am I the a-hole? Anti-A, anti-A, anti-A. She is abusive and using her period to justify it. No, she doesn't get away with that just because she has a genital that bleeds. You're right that you can't control her behavior and force her to see a doctor if she refuses. But then please control your behavior and leave her. She's mistreating you and is refusing any kind of help or opportunity to change. You do not deserve to stay stuck with a person like that. You deserve to be with someone who loves you and doesn't use excuses to mistreat you. Thank you for your perspective. It's definitely a hard pill to swallow. It really hurts because she only acts like this during her period, which to me proves that it's almost definitely a health issue. Maybe a hormonal imbalance? Usually she's so sweet and patient, but these few days each month are awful. I just want her to go to the doctor. Her period isn't an excuse for any of this, particularly as she hasn't acknowledged she needs to consult a doctor and likely a psychiatrist for her situation. OP, I hate to pull the usual dump him card, but at the very least move out for now. This is neither normal nor acceptable. Maybe she will seek help if she has to clean up her own messes and she manages to alienate enough people. Not the a-hole. Her intense mood change, excessive bleeding, and a period that lasts 7 to 10 days is alarming. She seriously needs to seek medical help for her own good. However, you're not the a-hole and you have every right to demand that she seeks help or leave. Thank you. I am very concerned and have been since I noticed how bad her periods had gotten. I have pleaded with her to please go to the doctor, but she's very stubborn and says there was nothing abnormal with her health. Her parents have also gotten involved and said it's abusive for me to pressure her so much when she's already said no. I feel backed into a corner here. Other than when she's on her period, she's wonderful. I love her very much, but I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do anymore. The a-hole for filing a report against my late husband's colleague and getting him fired. My husband, 33, passed away 3 weeks ago. He used to work for this company for 4 years. He'd known lots of people and made so many friends. For days, I kept getting texts from his colleague, Ted. I don't know him personally. I had no idea how he even got my number. When he first texted me, I texted back, "Where did you get my number?" And he replied saying he got it from my husband. At first, I felt annoyed, but then I started getting flirty texts from him. They started getting more and more inappropriate. I warned him to stop, but he sent me a D-pic one night at 3 a.m. and asked if I needed company since he knew I was lonely. I was appalled and enraged. I couldn't even sleep at night. I waited till the early morning to go to the company, straight to his boss, and filed a report against him after explaining in details about his behavior. He ended up getting fired because the other colleague said he did me and my husband wrong and disrespected his memory. He started arguing about how low what I did was, coming to his work in hopes of ruining his livelihood. He kept saying it was between him and I, and his workplace had nothing to do with it. But I told him I've known him only as my husband's colleague, and he was his colleague. He and a friend of his said that I was aiming to get him fired, and that he did nothing wrong and I could have talked it out with him instead. My mom called him a POS for doing this to my husband and me, but also said that he had a point in that it shouldn't come after his livelihood, since the guy has a kid to provide for. I felt bad about the whole thing, and now I feel like I made things worse and acted out of emotions. Now for the top comments. He got your phone number at work. He knew you were a widow because of work. He would never have targeted you if he hadn't known your husband and knew he died. So his behavior had everything to do with work. And doing this to his co-worker's widow? Of course his employer was horrified. The guy had it coming. Preying on someone's grief is so low. Not the a-hole. Exactly. Plus, she's a widow of 3 weeks. I might understand reaching out after 6 months and building a friendship. But 3 weeks and D-pics? That man deserved consequences for his horrible actions. OP, I'm so sorry for your loss and that you were harassed by this man. Please consider filing a police report if he continues. This is not okay behavior. Obviously not the a-hole. Given how quickly they fired him, I'm guessing that this was not his first case of harassing wives of coworkers. Or coworkers. As an employer, this a-hole could be employee of the century and I would still fire his butt for only this. Not the a-hole. He wasn't worried about his children's livelihood when he was harassing his coworker's widow. I have no idea where he was even coming from, sending a D-pic to a grieving widow of 3 weeks. WTF? Not the a-hole. He messed around and found out. The fact you are the widow of his late work colleague makes this absolutely a work issue. He disrespected and harassed you. If he didn't want to lose his job, all he had to do was not harass you. Literally, that's all he had to do. He wanted you to deal with him without going to his work because then he would face no consequences. He was already not listening when you said stop, and generally cops won't do anything unless it's immediately threatening. Going to his work was the only way he was going to learn. You absolutely did the right thing. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife my job has to come before hers? Background. Me 35 male, my wife 34 female, and our 2 kids 3 and 5 live in a very high cost of living city. I made about 5 times as much as my wife, so we do pretty well. If my income were the same as my wife's, we would not be able to afford to live in our city. My job is pretty low stress, about 35-ish hours a week with the only requirement that I be on call for 1 week out of each month. Normally nothing ever happens, so I do my usual routine with the understanding with my wife that if I am needed, I will drop whatever we are doing and work until the work issue is resolved. This only ever happens once every quarter and only lasts a few hours. My wife, on the other hand, has a much more stressful job. Her boss is incredibly demanding and often demands random and inane things, just as a power play with her subordinates. She usually works about 45 to 50 hours a week. As a result, I take care of most home stuff, drop off / pick up kids from daycare, cook meals, and generally keep the house clean. The AITA incident. It was an on-call week after work hours when my wife got a text from her boss about fulfilling an emergency request for a client. My wife complained to me that this request really could wait until tomorrow, but she would rather get it done so she doesn't have to listen to her boss gripe at her in the morning if it's not done. I had no problem with it. But I reminded her that I am on call, so I might need to switch with her if something came up. She made a grunt of acknowledgement, but nothing beyond that. About 2 hours later, I got an all-hands call to immediately come into the office. Normally, I can resolve issues remotely, but we had an issue that prevented us from remoting in. I rushed upstairs and told my wife I had to leave, only for her to turn around and say, "Sorry, but my issue came up first. You are going to have to tell your work you can't." I was taken aback and told her that no, this issue isn't something I can skip for anything short of I am physically in the hospital and can't come in. She got increasingly angry and started ranting at me, but I told her that I didn't have time for this and that I am leaving. When I get back, we can discuss this. She started crying, but I had no more time, so I left for the office. On the way, she called me to continue the argument, and in the heat of the moment, I said, "Look, I respect that you put a lot of time and energy into your work, but we cannot afford our house or lifestyle without my job. So when push comes to shove, my job has to come first. Otherwise, we are going to be on the streets." She hung up on me after that. When I got home about 3 hours later, around 11 p.m., the kids were crashed out on the living room couch with several bowls of cereal spilled around them. I went upstairs and my wife was locked in the bedroom and refused to talk. In the morning, I found out from the kids that she spent the night crying in her room and didn't feed them dinner or tuck them in, so they made cereal and had a sleepover in the living room. Not stay home, and her neglecting to feed your children should be a red flag. I mean, if I came to that, I would be livid. Kids shouldn't have to fend for themselves because their mom is having a meltdown. That's absolutely unacceptable. No matter what, the second I look my daughter in the eyes, I'll come down. I really can't comprehend this behavior. Maybe the kids are teenagers and I'm overreacting. If that's the case, I'm sorry, OP. But if not, your wife's got such a big red flag you could call her Xi Jinping. OP said the kids are 3 and 5, so horribly negligent and irresponsible to leave them unattended. Oh God, I assumed around 6 to 8 years old for the kids. 3 and 5 is absolutely too young to be left completely unattended and not fed. I get that she's upset, but that should not be happening. I'm not going to lie, I was prepared to give you the RDA haul after reading the title. But no, you're absolutely not the a-hole in this situation. Her behavior with the kids was horrible. She must change her job and attitude. I have tried many times to get her to look for a new job, but won't. I think it's partially a sense of loyalty to her job and a fear of newness. Your wife needs a reality check and some serious therapy, or you need to rethink things with her. She deliberately neglected your children because she was butthurt. This definitely sounds like mental breakdown, particularly the fear of change and the crying all night. She definitely needs to get herself in therapy to fix this. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for not wanting to be a stay-at-home mom and find a job instead?" My husband's father passed away recently. He grew up on a large farm in Kansas, and him and his mother inherited a farm. My husband John, 24 male, and I, 21 female, met while he was living in New Orleans, attending Tulane on athletic scholarship, and I was working as a waitress. We fell in love and he proposed quickly. We married a few months ago and I'm currently 3 months pregnant. We've been living in NOLA, but since his father's passing, his mother needs help with the farm, and he suggested we move there and it will be better for the child to be raised on the farm anyway. I didn't really want to do that, but I agreed as I knew how much it meant to him. When we got there, I was surprised how big and isolated the farm was. My husband and I share one car and his mother has another. I asked to take the car the other day to go to town to look for jobs, but he sat me down and told me it wouldn't be very practical for me to have a job at the moment because we only have 2 cars for 3 people, and they can't spare one for me to take for 8 hours a day, and they can't drive me to and from work when there's so much to be done on the farm. I wasn't very happy about that, but it made sense. So I looked for some jobs online, and when we were eating dinner, I started the subject again, saying that I think I will look for some work from home jobs, but I will need stable internet connection and ask if there's any way we can change providers, as it's a bit slow. He told me all work from home jobs are a scam and he doesn't want me falling into a trap, and that he needs the laptop available at all times to communicate with his customers. I was devastated, but didn't want to argue, and I understand that his work is currently supporting us all, including his mother. We had a small family gathering, and his sister and sister-in-law asked me why I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I explained them everything, and they told me I should think of my family first, that all kids in this family are raised by a stay-at-home mom, and I should just go with it and everyone will be happier. I said that I would get bored, and I need a job to help supporting us, but they kept telling me that I should listen to my husband. When everyone left, John came to our bedroom and we had our first massive argument. He told me I embarrassed him in front of his family. He told me he can't believe how heartless I am being, and that I clearly don't care enough for our baby to stay home and raise him. He called me an a-hole and told me it's best if I slept in the guest room for a few nights. He hasn't spoken to me since, and his mother told me I hurt him and all of them by refusing to carry on family tradition of being a stay-at-home mom, and that I am bringing shame to him, showing that he can't support his family. And I am torn. I thought I knew what I wanted, but everyone is telling me otherwise and my head is a mess. Am I really the a-hole for wanting to find a job? Is it really that wrong of me? I thought I was right, but now I am doubting myself. Now for the top comments. This is screaming isolation tactics, not stay-home. And then the argument and punishment for having her own opinion on what being a stay-at-home mom would feel like specifically for her. OMG. I'd be telling him, forget the guest bedroom. I'll stay with a friend. That's the thing. She doesn't have any friends where she lives. She doesn't have any options. How would she even get to a friend? She doesn't have a car. This whole situation is just scary. He doesn't care at all about what she wants. Not stay home. Get out of that house now. You do not want to be trapped on an isolated farm in Kansas with no money of your own, no car, and a baby. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to get away. Way easier to leave pregnant than with a baby. OP, they're trying to coerce you into their lifestyle. Did your husband ever discuss with you before moving what his plan was for you and your life? It sounds like you'll just be the incubator and caregiver in his eyes, as it doesn't seem like he has any respect for you as a partner or even a person. Being a stay-at-home mom is so hard. You are on 24/7, especially if you don't have a good support system. No car, limited access to computer? Ridiculous. Also, a large majority of work-from-home jobs send you the equipment you need. Laptops, monitors, printers, etc. However, I wouldn't be surprised that if you were to do that anyway while living in that house, that they would sabotage it however they could. Really consider leaving. Doing it sooner rather than later. You can get the marriage annulled. Just file right away. Don't get stuck in this hell of isolation and being told how wrong you are for wanting to just live life. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting my girlfriend to decorate my apartment? I, 29 male, have been with my girlfriend, 24 female, for 2 years now. We have not lived together before, but she's currently 18 weeks pregnant, so I suggest that she move in with me once her lease was up. It ended at the end of June, so she's been living with me for almost 3 weeks now. Well, we get along well, and overall living together has been great. I've noticed that she started to change things around my apartment. She only brought a few things over since my apartment is fully furnished, so I understand her need to make it feel more like her space. Everything in my apartment is mid-century modern. It's a mid-century modern building and I bought the apartment because of how much I love that style. Some of the things that she's suggesting or bringing into the apartment absolutely does not go with that vibe. She's taken down some of my artwork and replaced it, cleared off my shelves I curated and put her knickknacks on it, went through my pantry and cleared out things she thought were unhealthy, all without asking me. She works from home while I work in the office, so she has a lot more time at the apartment than I do. I just wish she would run things by me first. I'm an architect. She's an editor and doesn't have the same designer eye, which clearly shows. What really bothered me was that she started to throw some things away without asking. I went to take out the trash and saw that some birthday cards I kept were in there. When I asked about it, she said she was just getting rid of clutter. But her stuff is more like clutter while mine has actual sentimental value. I told her to stop touching things in the apartment, and she pointed out that she should have a say because she lives there, which I agree with, but she doesn't run anything by me. Now she's being very avoidant and passive-aggressive. So am I the a-hole? Everyone sucks here. You do realize that when you have a baby, your carefully curated apartment vibe will change very much, right? That said, she shouldn't be throwing your stuff out without asking you. Time to sit down, have an adult conversation, and come up with a compromise. Right, can't have those beautiful teak upholstered chairs because there's going to be all manner of bodily fluids, stains, and teeth marks in them. It's not even just stains and whatnot. My kid gnawed on all of our wood furniture like a demented beaver. Everyone sucks here. I would have said not to the a-hole if not for the I told her to stop touching things in the apartment. She has an equal say in what your space looks like, and a right to make it feel like home for her. She's the a-hole for making changes without talking to you, and especially for throwing some of your stuff out without your consent. You guys need to have a talk and reach a compromise. Did you go out of your way to make her feel like the home is hers when she moved in? It doesn't necessarily sound like that's the case. I get that the OP sees it as his house, but that doesn't work when you are a family. You are basically asking her to conform to your reality here. There needs to be some compromise, and she's going to need some space of her own, particularly if she works from home. I'll admit, I don't really do anything other than help her move in. I've never lived with someone else before, so I'm not really sure how I could make her feel more at home. Any suggestions would be great. A good first step would be to start calling it our apartment instead of my apartment, since she lives there now too. Everyone sucks here. She should be able to help decorate the apartment, but she shouldn't throw away possibly sentimental items without asking. You also sound full of yourself. Agreed. The shelves I carefully curated comment made me gag. I knew someone who was this full of herself. Her kids only had all wooden toys because it fit her aesthetic. Am I the a-hole for blindsiding my landlord with a 1-month notice after they blindsided me with a 3-month notice? I know you probably read that and thought, huh? How can you be blindsided with a 3-month notice? Allow me to explain. Me and my wife were renting and had agreed to a month-to-month lease. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a lease that may be altered or terminated by either party as long as proper notice is given to change or end the lease. Our contract stated that 30 days notice was required from both parties. We got along with the landlords great and lived there for about a year and a half. We never made a late payment. We would often have dinner together, and there was a mutual like for one another. After some time, they began telling us that even though it's a month-to-month lease, they wanted to continue this arrangement long-term. They gave us the whole, we love having you here, and we want this to be a long-term thing. We felt reassured by that, and stopped being so on edge all the time. We stopped worrying about them kicking us to the curb. We figured we could stay there for years, and we were happy about that. That is what they filled our heads up with, that we are secure. We were finally at peace. Then, one day, my landlord comes up to us and explains that, unfortunately, we will need to leave in 3 months. Because the space we were occupying was going to be converted for a family member that was going to move in. We felt a little betrayed and lied to. However, we understood that is what we agreed to, and we should have never relied on their word to begin with. He kept telling us, I gave you all 3 months notice instead of 1 because we really respect and appreciate you guys. I'm doing y'all a favor. That shows we really care. Half of me agrees, but the other half was like, you're still a prick. That same night, me and my wife began apartment hunting. Luck was on our side because we found a better apartment with more space at around the same price as our current apartment. We put in the application and got accepted 1 week later. We signed all the paperwork and were given a move-in date. The time came to tell our landlords. We told them we had found a new place and wanted to activate our 30 days notice. We thanked them for everything, the same stuff they fed us. We let them know that after being told we had to leave in 3 months, it was in our best interest to find a new apartment sooner, and so we did. We didn't want to wait too long to start looking and end up homeless after the 3 months. They went off on me and my wife, telling us we can't do that and that they would take us to court. They were yelling personal insults to us and the police were called. Am I crazy for not believing that we did something wrong? Now for the top comments. Our contract stated that 30 days notice was required from both parties. This is all we needed to know, and the only real thing that matters here. You're abiding by the contract that both you and your landlord signed. You're not the a-hole. OP wouldn't be the a-hole to abide strictly by the contract regardless. But it also doesn't sound like they sat on notice maliciously. They found a place to move and let them know. Landlord wants the extra months of rent. Too bad. Totally agree. OP was weirdly hung up on the 3 months notice thing. Like that actually was very kind of the landlord, because it puts them in the exact position they ended up in, missing out on 2 months rent. It wouldn't be a kindness if they weren't sacrificing anything. If the landlord really wanted you there longer term, OP, they would have switched you to another lease. The landlord is unequivocally the a-hole for getting mad that OP basically responded to the gesture of kindness with, "Okay, I accept, and will use that extra time accordingly." They clearly just wanted the credit of doing a nice thing without actually doing anything meaningful. But OP, the whole only 3 months notice after saying how much they liked us but never moving us to a longer-term lease angle isn't as sympathetic as you seem to think it is. Neither of you did anything wrong until they got mad. I was going to say no a-holes here, as they can ask you to leave regardless of what they said before and you can tell them you're leaving, right up until the point they freaked out. I'm betting they were counting on those 2 months of rent to help pay for the modification to the space for the family member. Not the a-hole and take photos of everything before you leave. If they freak out now, they could freak out about damage and keep your security deposit. OP, buy a newspaper that morning and put that front of the newspaper in the pictures. It's a way of date stamping them so they can't claim the pictures were from the move-in date. And take pictures of everything. They're definitely gonna treat that security deposit as a bonus month's rent. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling the new neighbors that they got what they paid for, including being shunned by the neighborhood? Where I live, real estate developers have started snatching up family homes, bulldozing them, and building enormous $2 million houses on the plots of land. The houses also stick out horribly in terms of aesthetics. Think single-level brick homes with a 3-level gigantic white and black box in the middle. My home's been in my family for several generations. We have always been known for having a large, beautiful garden. We invited over kids to help with gardening. We gave away so many veggies, would hold parties, etc. It's been a neighborhood treasure for years. Until developers snatched up the lot next door, bulldozed and erected an enormous house that blocks out the light to most of the garden. Many of us tried to fight it with the city, but everything was denied. It was heartbreaking. Our neighborhood has been changed forever. This was a link to my family, and I almost have to go through a grieving process for it. The new owners moved in and were not welcomed warmly by people in the neighborhood. I avoided them for as long as I could, other than politely waving or nodding. It was a young couple in their early 20s. We finally came face to face and the woman asked if we could chat. She said that they felt like maybe they'd done something wrong when they moved in, or if they aren't pulling in their trash bins or something, being too loud, etc., because people haven't been very friendly. The guy says that he is surprised considering it felt like a nice and somewhat affluent neighborhood, and given the price, he was expecting friendly neighbors. I asked if they had done any research about the area. They said that they moved from California, so no. I said that maybe that was their mistake. They said they didn't know what I meant, so I asked if they'd ever looked in our backyard. They said yes, and said they think the garden is cute. I said yes. The garden that now has about half less sunlight than before that house was built and was a neighborhood treasure. The guy said, well, it's not our fault you built the garden there, is it? And I said, well, you guys got what you paid for. $2 million for a house that everyone in the neighborhood hates. I said that I hoped it was worth it and wished them a nice day. When I told another neighbor about the exchange, she told me that she does feel bad for them moving without having any idea what they were getting themselves into. Am I the a-hole for telling them that they got what they paid for? So you unloaded your pent-up anger at the developers on a couple who unwittingly bought the house? You're the a-hole. That couple did nothing wrong. They bought a house that was on the market. Now, if they had been the ones to buy the house/land from the previous owner, bulldoze it down and then build their million-dollar mansion, you might have a leg to stand on. But from what you say in the post, the neighborhood is taking out their frustration/anger on an innocent couple. Yeah, but I do get why he'd be angry if instead of, "Oh, we're sorry we didn't know about your garden," they decided to go with, "It's not our fault you built your garden there." You're the a-hole. They just bought a house. Did you research the neighborhood? Is your garden a big thing so well known it's in papers? That people could know about it without having talks with the neighbors before moving in, and specific talks. And even then, they did not design the house. Just bought it. It is not their fault, and you are being angry at them as if it is. Even if they researched, it's not like the house being on the market or someone else buying the house would have changed the fact that the house existed. No matter who bought the house or if it sat empty, it was blocking the garden. You're the a-hole. I've seen a lot of NIMBY-type folks on here, but you take the cake today due to treating people like crap because they apparently stole your sunlight, and you were big mad about it. These people likely had no idea about your garden or what was there prior to the house they bought being there. It's not their fault the house was built there. You want to be mad? Be mad at the real estate developers. That's the actual bad guy here, not the people who bought the house. Okay, but people from places like California moving to places that are smaller and cheaper building houses like this really is messing up the market in some states. Next story. Would I be the a-hole if I purposefully bought a smaller house so my mom can't come? My 34 female mom, 65, got divorced from my dad when I was 20. I had saved all my money for years and had been working 2 years at this point, and the economy crashed and houses were so much cheaper. My dad had remortgaged our house so much it was worthless, and the bank had to get it. I bought with co-ownership, so I paid a mortgage on half the house and rent on the other half a 3-bedroom house. Otherwise, my mom and 2 brothers, Josh 13 and Richard 18 at a time, would have been homeless. Since then, I have paid for everything and paid off her credit card debt twice, about £6,000, and I buy absolutely everything including food. For the past 3 years, she has become absolutely unbearable, commenting on everything I buy, and keeps saying, "When I was your age, we didn't have money to waste on XYZ. It's my money and I work all the time." She will never give me peace, and working from home has just made it worse. Constantly nitpicking, asking the same questions over and over, starting arguments and then playing the victim. Richard is married now, and as always, everything revolves around him even though he has never done anything. So I said next year when she gets the state's pension and has loads more money, she's gone because she's starting arguments every other day with me and Josh. I told her that she can move in with Richard as he has a 4-bedroom house or find somewhere else to live because I no longer care. She keeps saying, "What will people think?" All she seems to care about is what other people think, and not the hurt she caused all the time. So would I be the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, but like, just buy the size of house you and your husband want and tell her to pound sand. Thanks, though I don't have a husband because she's driven away anyone I've ever liked and complained, "What would I do if you got married? Where would I live?" To be honest, I want a house that Josh, youngest brother, can live in and that my 2 little nephews can stay a couple of nights a week. You do realize that she's keeping you single so you'll be her caregiver in her old age, right? Your brothers are there to give her grandchildren and you're there to cater to her every whim. Can't let you get a family of your own that you might prioritize over her now, can we? She's a grown adult who has been parasiting her child for over a decade. Kick her out now. She can fend for herself. Not the a-hole. You are completely right. I'm so sick of getting taken advantage of. I stand up to her and then she just wears me down. He won't take her. He told me in August that he doesn't want her. That doesn't mean you have to keep her. Go to Citizens Advice and they will tell you how to legally evict her because it's a process. But if she has proof that she's being formally asked to leave, then she will be helped by the council. You know, I never even thought of the Citizens Advice Bureau. I will give them a call tomorrow. Please update. You're empowered by these comments, and that's great. But I fear as soon as you get near your mother, you may cave because she's had 34 years of molding, brainwashing, and frankly, emotionally mistreating you, and that you'll return to old habits. Take care of yourself. Evict her, and it'll be on Richard to tell her to her face he doesn't care about her. Good luck no matter what. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for calling the cops on my neighbor and getting my sister in trouble? Background. I, 40 female, am unmarried. No kids. My sister, 45 female, is married with 3 kids and bought a house about 3 to 4 years ago in the super nice suburb of town. It's a great area. Lots of parks, trails, with a really good school system. I found and bought a house in the same neighborhood. I loved it for the size of the yards, great for my dogs. Love that I can now walk or jog to all the trails in the local lake. It is, however, very suburban, and most of the people here have families, making me a little bit of an outlier. I'm fine with that. I don't really care. I live in the house by myself. Neighbors have been nice, but most of them hang out with each other and have playdates with the kids. There are neighborhood barbecues that I have been to. So a week ago, I'm watching TV at home, around 9 p.m., and all of a sudden my dogs start going crazy. My doorbell rings multiple times, and then rapid knocking. I jump off my couch, look at my Ring doorbell, and it's a stranger, male, knocking on my door. I have no idea who he is, and he just keeps banging on my door. My dogs are freaking out, so I call the cops. He goes away after about 5 to 7 minutes. The cops show up 20 minutes later. I show them the video and they told me they know who it is, though wouldn't tell me, and then left. The next day, I get a phone call from my sister. She's super miffed that I called cops on Dave, and how could I do that in this community? I'm confused. Who is Dave? Oh, it's apparently the local neighborhood watch guy and school teacher, and he thought I was driving too fast down the street and wanted to talk to me. I was flabbergasted because 1, there's no way to drive fast in this neighborhood as there are stop signs everywhere. Cops everywhere. They have their own police force, and there are speed bumps every 2 blocks. 2, why didn't he call/text/email before knocking on the door at 9 p.m. on anyone's house, much less a single woman at home? But sister said that my reaction was totally over the top, and you don't live in the hood anymore. People visit other people. I stand by my right to be safe and not get harassed by the neighbor. But sister is angry because there was no danger whatsoever. And apparently, this was the discussion at the recent PTA meeting. And since I wasn't there, because why would I go to a PTA meeting? She was charged with defending me and now she looks bad by association. She also brought up that I walk my dogs without a bra on all the time. And that's just not good. WTF? She wants me to reach out to Dave and apologize and say that I am absolutely sorry for calling the cops and driving fast. She told me that I needed to play nice with the neighbors unless I wanted to be moving in a year. Maybe I did overreact, but I'm just so annoyed that I don't want to do anything related to that. And maybe that makes me the a-hole. Thoughts? Not the a-hole. What Dave did was highly inappropriate, and you being discussed at a PTA meeting was also inappropriate. Is this an HOA? Actually, no, there's no HOA. This is partially why I bought here. The PTA meetings apparently have just slowly become a neighborhood meeting because everyone is their guest, per my sister. There are a few other people here that don't have kids or aren't married, but I don't know what they do or care. If you care enough, approach the school board to alert them that PTA meetings are being exploited because non-school related issues are being discussed. These people need to get a life because this is a gossip club. The school board probably doesn't care. Communities like this are all ran by the same chuds, and nothing productive ever gets done. Just one big community circle jerk. I'm sorry. The moment the cops basically went, "Yep, we know who this guy is," you know they aren't a huge fan of him. If they thought Dave was this awesome, helpful guy, they would have gone, "Oh, it's Dave. He lives on Maple and does neighborhood watch." I imagine it was related to that, but we'll speak with him still. Instead it was, "Yeah, we know who it is." That's a, "we find this guy a bother." Because Dave is a wannabe cop and is in everyone's business. I bet this isn't the first time that Dave has overstepped his boundaries. Because he is bullying the neighbors to follow his rules. Sorry, I mean the neighborhood rules.